The crimson sons of Crixus cast long shadows across the crystalline desert as Raventhorn cursed his luck. The mission had been simple: infiltrate the outer territories, gather intel on the alien queen's defenses, and return to Earth command. But simple rarely stayed simple when dealing with the Crixian Empire. He pressed himself against a towering crystal formation, his enhanced combat suit blending with the shadows. 3 Crixian patrol ships hummed overhead, their search beams cutting through the growing dusk. They were hunting him with precision that spoke of a trap rather than a chance encounter. Someone had sold him out. Status report, he sub-vocalized into his comm unit. Static answered. His team had gone dark hours ago, leaving him alone in hostile territory. The weight of his plasma rifle offered little comfort against the forces gathering around him. Movement caught his eye, a flash of metallic scales in the dying light. The Crixian warriors were closing in on foot now, their biomechanical armor making them twice the size of a human. Their queen bred them for battle, enhanced them through ancient technologies his people barely understood. But Raven hadn't survived 15 years as a mercenary by underestimating his opponents. He triggered his suit's stealth systems and moved, each step calculated. If he could reach the ravine to the east, he might. A screech of torn metal filled the air as an energy whip wrapped around his leg. His stealth field shattered, leaving him exposed. Raven rolled, bringing his rifle up, but 3 more whips struck from different directions. They pulled tight, forcing him to his knees as warriors emerged from their hiding spots. The human shows skill, a female voice declared in accented standard. Most don't detect our approach at all. Through the cloud of crystalline dust, a figure approached. Unlike her warrior's utilitarian armor, hers was ornate, curves of living metal flowing like liquid mercury. Her face remained hidden behind a mask of the same material, but there was no mistaking her identity. Queen Athera, the scourge of the Outer Rim, had come to witness his capture personally. Your reputation precedes you, mercenary, she continued, circling him. 5 successful infiltrations of Crixian space. 3 military installations sabotaged. An impressive record. Raven tested the whip's tension, earning a surge of energy that made his muscles spasm. If you're looking for intel, save your breath. Better interrogators than you have tried. A sound emerged from behind her mask, a laugh, though there was no warmth in it. Interrogation? No, I have something far more interesting planned. She knelt before him, her mask dissolving to reveal features that were eerily human-like, save for the metallic sheen of her skin and the geometric patterns that traced her cheekbones. Her eyes held the same predatory gleam he'd seen in apex hunters across the galaxy. My arena grows stale, she said. The same warriors, the same victories. But you could provide real entertainment. A human who fights like a Crixian. Who thinks like one. Her hand brushed his cheek, cold as steel. Break you, remake you, watch you become legend or die trying. Yes, you'll do nicely. Raven spat at her feet. The warriors tensed, energy weapons humming to life, but Athera raised a hand to stay them. Her smile widened. Defiant. Good. It's no sport if the spirit breaks too quickly. She stood, mask reforming. Take him to the capital. Prepare him for the arena. And ensure he survives the journey. I want him intact for what's to come. The whips yanked him upright as stun cuffs locked around his wrists. As they dragged him toward a waiting transport, Raven caught one last glimpse of Athera. For a moment, something passed between them, recognition, perhaps, of a worthy adversary. Then the transport doors sealed, leaving him alone with his thoughts and the growing certainty that his life was about to change in ways he couldn't imagine. The training pit reeked of blood and ozone. Raven ducked under a crackling energy blade, feeling its heat singe his hair as he rolled across the metallic sand. His opponent, a hulking Crixian warrior named Vex, pressed the advantage, each strike leaving glowing scars in the arena floor. 3 weeks of this brutal routine had taught Raven more about Crixian combat than years of battlefield encounters. They fought like their queen, precise, relentless, without mercy. But they also had patterns, weaknesses that revealed themselves to a patient observer. Vex overextended on his next thrust. Raven seized the opening, grabbing the warrior's arm and using his own momentum to slam him into the ground. The impact rang through the chamber like a gong. Before Vex could recover, Raven had the practice blade at his throat. "Match point," called the overseer, Commandant Rykos. "The human wins again." Raven helped Vex up, a gesture that had initially shocked his Crixian trainers. They expected savagery from their arena fighters, not courtesy. But Raven had survived this long by defying expectations. "You adapt quickly," Vex growled, respect evident despite his frustration. "Perhaps too quickly." From the shadows of the observation deck above, a familiar figure watched. Queen Athra had attended every training session, though she never spoke during them. Her presence was like a physical weight, her gaze following his every move. "Tomorrow you face your first true arena battle," Rykos announced. "Your opponent will be Krull the Rendered. He has killed 17 challengers this season." "Only 17? Raven wiped blood from a cut above his eye. "He must be getting slow." The commandant's expression remained stern, but something like amusement flickered in his metallic eyes. "Your humor won't save you in the arena, human. Krull fights to kill. So did the last 3 Spec Ops teams that tried to eliminate me." Raven stretched his aching muscles. "I'm still here." Later, in his cell, Raven reviewed recordings of Krull's previous fights. The massive alien was more beast than warrior, augmented with crude cybernetics that made him nearly impervious to pain. But like all beings who relied on raw power, he had blind spots. A soft chime announced an unexpected visitor. The force field disappeared, and Queen Athra stepped into his cell. Without her armor, she seemed smaller, though no less dangerous. Her metallic skin caught the dim light like liquid silver. "Most fighters spend their last night before the arena praying or raging," she said. "You study." Raven didn't rise from his bunk. "Knowledge beats prayer every time." "And what knowledge have you gained about me, I wonder?" She moved closer, her movements liquid grace. "Why do you think I chose you for this?" "Because I wounded your pride." Raven met her gaze. "A human who breached your defenses multiple times? Can't have that. Better to break me publicly, make an example." Athra's laugh was surprisingly musical. "Is that what you believe?" She leaned against the wall, studying him. "Your species is young, but fascinating. You adapt, evolve, find ways to survive that defy all logic. My people have spent millennia perfecting ourselves, yet you achieve through sheer will what we accomplished through generations of enhancement. If this is a recruitment pitch, I'll pass." "No pitch." She pushed off the wall. "Merely an observation. Tomorrow, you'll either prove my theories about human potential correct, or you'll die like the others. Either way, I'll have my answer." She turned to leave, then paused. "Though I admit, it would be disappointing if you fell to someone like Krull." Raven waited until she reached the door. "You know, you could just ask me to dinner instead of all this gladiator business." Athra stiffened for a fraction of a second, so brief he almost missed it. Then she was gone, leaving Raven to wonder if he'd imagined the slight smile that crossed her face. The next morning, as he stepped into the roaring arena, that smile stayed with him. Across the sand, Krull bellowed challenges in his native tongue, cybernetics gleaming. The crowd of Crixian nobility bayed for blood. Above them all, Queen Athra sat on her crystalline throne. Their eyes met briefly, and Raven could have sworn she nodded, the smallest gesture of acknowledgement. Then the horn sounded, and there was no more time for reflection. Krull charged, and Raven began the deadly dance that would either end his life or cement his legend in the arena of the Scourge Queen. The private combat chamber was silent except for the clash of blades and controlled breathing. Raven moved through the forms Athra demonstrated, metal singing against metal. After his victory over Krull, she had begun training him personally, away from prying eyes. "Your form improves," she said, circling him. "But you still telegraph your attacks to your left." Her practice blade flashed, catching him off guard. Instead of yielding, Raven turned the parry into a counter, bringing them chest to chest. Time seemed to freeze. Her metallic skin shimmered with exertion, geometric patterns pulsing with internal energy. This close, he could see flecks of gold in her silver eyes. "Better," she whispered, neither of them moving. "You're learning to turn weakness into advantage." The chamber doors burst open. They separated instantly as High Minister Voss strode in, his crystalline staff clicking against the floor. His cybernetic eyes narrowed at the scene. "My queen, the syndicate representatives have arrived early. They await you in the throne room." Athra's expression hardened into the mask of sovereignty. "Very well. We're finished here." She turned to leave, then added without looking back, "Same time tomorrow, gladiator." Raven watched her go, noting the tension in her shoulders. Over the past weeks, he'd learned to read her moods, the subtle signs that betrayed her thoughts. Something about this meeting troubled her. Later that night, he overheard guards talking outside his cell. The Syndicate, a coalition of wealthy outer worlds, was pushing for an alliance through marriage. They wanted their prince to wed the Scourge Queen, uniting their territories against the expanding human federation. The news shouldn't have bothered him. If anything, political turmoil might provide an opportunity for escape. He'd maintained his skills, memorized patrol patterns, identified weak points in the security systems. Yet the thought of leaving felt hollow now. A soft chime interrupted his thoughts. Athra entered, still in her formal regalia from the meeting. Without a word, she sat on the edge of his bunk. "The Syndicate's terms are favorable," she said finally. "Their military technology would strengthen our borders. Their trade routes would enrich our people. And their prince?" Raven kept his voice neutral. "Is he favorable too?" She turned to him, expression unreadable. "He is what he needs to be. As am I." Her hand found his in the darkness. "My people expect their queen to be perfect. Untouchable. Divine. And what does their queen expect of herself? I don't know anymore." Her fingers intertwined with his, cool metal against warm flesh. "You've changed things, Raven. Made me question certainties I've held for centuries." He reached up, tracing the geometric patterns on her cheek. They glowed at his touch. "Maybe some things need questioning. I can't." She started, but then closed the distance between them. The kiss was like touching a live wire, electric, dangerous, impossible to pull away from. Her metallic lips were softer than he'd imagined, warming to his touch. When they finally separated, her eyes were glowing brighter than he'd ever seen. "This is madness," she whispered. "The best things usually are." A distant alarm shattered the moment. Athra stood, composure returning instantly. "There's unrest in the outer districts. Rebels opposing the Syndicate alliance." She moved to the door. "Whatever this is between us, it cannot be. I have a duty to my people. And if your duty destroys who you really are?" She didn't answer, but her pause at the doorway spoke volumes. After she left, Raven paced his cell for hours, mind racing. He had spent his life taking on impossible missions, beating unbeatable odds. But this might be his greatest challenge yet, proving to a warrior queen that love wasn't weakness, that the heart could be as strong as any empire. In the distance, explosions lit up the night sky. Change was coming to Crixus, one way or another. The only question was whether it would unite them or tear them apart forever. The palace burned. Raven fought his way through smoke-filled corridors, dispatching rebels with practiced efficiency. His cell door had opened mysteriously during the initial attack, Athra's doing, he suspected. Now he had to reach her before the assassins did. Intelligence suggested the rebellion was syndicate-backed, meant to destabilize the Empire before the arranged marriage. A convenient crisis to force Athra's hand. But they hadn't counted on him. A squad of rebels rounded the corner, wearing stolen Crixian armor. They hesitated at seeing a human. That hesitation cost them. Raven moved like liquid death, his arena training making him nearly invisible in the chaos. Within seconds, they lay unconscious or groaning. The throne room's been breached. A guard's voice crackled over a fallen rebel's comm unit. The Queen is cornered. Raven's heart stopped. The throne room was 3 levels up. Too far. Unless. He sprinted to the nearest window and looked up. Decorative crystal formations scaled the palace walls, treacherous in normal conditions, suicide during a firefight. Perfect. Plasma bolts sizzled past him as he climbed, using skills honed from years of infiltration. A rebel took aim from another window. Raven swung around a crystal spire, letting momentum carry him through the glass feet first. His boot connected with the shooter's jaw. More rebels lay sprawled outside the throne room doors, Athra's handiwork. Inside, he found her surrounded by 5 assassins, her armor damaged but her blade dancing as she held them back. Even wounded, she was magnificent. "Your Majesty," Raven called, drawing their attention. "Hope I'm not interrupting." "You're late, gladiator." She parried a thrust, her smile fierce. "I expected you 3 minutes ago." They fought back-to-back, movements synchronized from countless practice sessions. What started as a desperate defense became an intricate dance of death. When it ended, the assassins lay scattered around them. "You came for me," Athra said softly, letting her guard drop for just a moment. "Always." Raven touched her wounded arm. "Though you seem to have things under control. Appearances matter in politics." She winced as he examined the injury. "I had to make them think they had a chance, draw out their true numbers." "And the syndicate's involvement?" Her eyes hardened. "Confirmed. Their prince sent his personal guard to protect me. They were the first to turn." "Convenient." "Indeed." She straightened, Queen's mask returning. "The outer districts have pledged loyalty, disgusted by the syndicate's treachery. The marriage alliance is finished." "And us?" Raven asked quietly. Before she could answer, High Minister Voss burst in with a squad of royal guards. He assessed the scene, cybernetic eyes whirring. "My queen, you're injured." "And the human?" His hand moved to his weapon. "Saved my life," Athra finished. "As witnessed by the palace security feeds. Feeds that will also show syndicate agents starting this rebellion." Voss froze. "The council will demand answers. Explanations for why a gladiator was free during the attack. Why he was armed. Why he fights with moves only the royal guard should know." "The council," Athra said, her voice carrying the weight of centuries, "can question my methods after they've cleaned up this mess." She turned to Raven. "Escort me to the medical bay, gladiator. We have much to discuss." As they left, Raven caught Voss's expression, a mixture of resignation and revelation. The old minister had served long enough to recognize a shifting of powers. The question was whether he'd adapt or resist. "The Empire will need rebuilding after this," Athra said once they were alone in the corridor. "New alliances. New traditions, perhaps." "Sounds like a challenge." Raven took her hand, feeling the warmth that now radiated from her metallic skin. Good thing you have someone who specializes in impossible missions. She squeezed his hand, mask finally falling away completely. We'll need to be careful. Strategic. But maybe it's time Crixus remembered that even queens are allowed to follow their hearts. Together they walked through the battle-scarred palace, already planning their next move in a game where the stakes were no longer just survival, but the future of an empire, and the love that might save it. Dawn broke over the capital city, crystalline spires catching the first rays of the crimson suns. In the Grand Council chamber, Queen Athra faced her ministers, Raven standing at her right hand, a position that had sparked fierce debate. The laws are absolute, Minister Voss argued. No outsider may hold position in the royal court, much less stand beside the throne. Laws change, Athra responded, her voice carrying to every corner of the vast hall. As must we all. The rebellion proved that isolation breeds weakness. The syndicate's betrayal shows we need new allies. And you suggest a human? A mercenary? Another minister sneered. The same species that threatens our borders? I suggest someone who has proven his worth 1,000 times over. Athra's eyes swept the chamber. In the arena, where he fought with honor. In battle, where he bled for our people. In council, where his strategies helped us uncover the conspiracy that would have destroyed us. Raven watched her, marveling at how she commanded the room. The past month had been a whirlwind of political maneuvering and reforms. Each day brought new challenges, but they faced them together. Your Majesty, Voss stepped forward, if you proceed with this, there will be consequences. The outer houses may revolt. Let them. A new voice rang out. Commander Vex entered the chamber, battle-scarred and proud. I've fought beside this human. Trained with him. Any who question his worth can face me in the arena. Murmurs rippled through the assembly. Vex's support carried weight, he represented the warrior caste that formed the Empire's backbone. The old ways brought us to the brink of civil war, Athra declared. I propose a new path. Not abandoning our traditions, but evolving them. Opening trade with Earth. Cultural exchange. Diplomatic ties. She took Raven's hand, her metallic skin now perfectly matched to his temperature. Starting with this union. Silence fell. Then, surprisingly, Voss laughed. You never intended to simply free him, did you? This was your plan all along. I planned to break him, Athra admitted, squeezing Raven's hand. Instead, he helped break the chains that bound us all to outdated laws and fears. There will still be opposition, Raven warned quietly. Good. Athra's smile held the same fierce joy he'd first seen in combat. Life's boring without a challenge. The council session lasted hours, but in the end, tradition gave way to change. As they stood on the palace balcony afterward, watching the twin suns set, Raven pulled Athra close. Having second thoughts about choosing a mere human as your consort? She traced the scars on his face, badges of honor from their shared battles. You were never mere anything. You fought your way into my arena, my empire. Her fingers intertwined with his. My heart. Poetic. The fearsome scourge queen's going soft. Never. She kissed him with the same passion she brought to combat. Just expanding my conquest to new territories. Below them, the city sparkled like scattered diamonds. Ships from Earth were already arriving, opening diplomatic channels. Two worlds, bridged by an impossible love. Ready for our next impossible mission? Raven asked. Athra's laugh echoed across the crystal spires. With you? Always. The laws were changed that day. But the stories would say it wasn't politics or necessity that truly transformed the Crixian Empire. It was love, fierce as plasma fire, stronger than crystalline steel, defying every barrier of space and species to forge something entirely new. And in the years that followed, when people spoke of the warrior queen and her human consort, they didn't tell tales of conquest or power. They told of how an empire of steel and crystal learned to embrace change, how ancient traditions found new life, and how the heart proved mightier than any weapon in the universe.